Hey adventurers, so today is going to be another book review. This is going to be for Isles of the Emberdark by Brandon Sanderson. I guess I can hold it up. This is his fifth secret project that he wrote, and I am very excited to, or that he released rather, and I'm very excited to review this one because I have definitely some thoughts on it. And yeah, let's get into this. So this is epic fantasy, high fantasy, exploration, discovery. That's kind of cool to see Brandon Sanderson tackling a little bit in his fantasy series, but this is also a Cosmere novel, and so it does fit into the rest of the Cosmere. It is a later entry into the Cosmere timeline wise, and so I would be careful about, you're not going to get a whole lot of spoilers, quite honestly. You're not going to understand most of what's going on if you haven't read the other no, you're not going to understand the Cosmere spoilers if you haven't read the other Cosmere series, and so I'm not worried about it in that way. It is a standalone book. Anyways, let's go into this before I ramble and give away who knows what I wrote actually. So let's go into this. Isles of the Emberdark is the fifth secret project released by Brandon Sanderson. This is another of his Cosmere novels and builds upon one of the novellas that he previously published, which was titled Sixth of the Dusk. But it is not required to read Sixth of the Dusk in order to read Isles of the Emberdark. Sanderson intentionally chose to make this book accessible without having to do homework, as it were. And what he chose to do here was actually weave the novella into the book itself, and it acts as flashback chapters during the first section of the book, providing the details and the necessary information to understand what is going on with this new story, with this story that is in its own story, but also takes and builds upon that novella. I do think reading the novella is beneficial because it's not split up into chapters, every other chapter or whatever, and you're able to just sit down and read that narrative from beginning to end and then come into here and know what's going on. So that is helpful. Before I get into the rest of this review, though, I just quickly like to say welcome to an Erudite adventure. I'm T. If you're liking what you're seeing from us, please like, comment, and subscribe. Alright, so seeing as my reviews are more often an explanation of my experience with the book rather than breaking down the book itself, it is important to note that when I went into this book, I was feeling a little bit burnt out on Sanderson. After Wind and Truth, I had very little desire to read anything more by him, and yet I still did. I read Legion, The Many Lives of Stephen Leeds, as well as Arcanum Unbounded, both before reading Isles of the Emberdark. Arcanum Unbounded was in large part due to the fact that it contained Sixth of the Dusk, and I wanted to read that before reading this. Those books didn't really affect my burnout one way or the other, and I would point you to the reviews for both of those books for more detail, because I do have reviews. By the time you're seeing this, I do have reviews for both of those up as well. And so they didn't really affect my burnout one way or the other, but I still felt the same when going into Emberdark. And once again, I found that my burnout really wasn't affected negatively by this book. And so I appreciate that. I'm still not feeling like, okay, I just want to go read a whole bunch of Sanderson, but I wasn't negatively affected by Isles of the Emberdark in the way that I was with Wind and Truth, where I was just like, okay, I need a break from Sanderson at this point. This is more of a seafaring, survival, and exploration story, and that's something that was very fun to explore, something that I really enjoyed. The new setting as well, and continuing to learn about the Cosmere, that is something fun to me, even though I don't love it as much as a lot of people do. I kind of want self-contained stories or self-contained series, but it is kind of fun to make the connections and understand more about how the Cosmere works, the universe works. This book is split into two POVs, two point of views, those of Dusk and Starling. Of those two POVs, Dusk is fantastic, just like amazing, and would have single-handedly counteracted the burnout had it not been for Starling. I don't think she is necessarily a bad character or even a bad POV, but it just really clashed with the story and the tone of Dusk. I also didn't enjoy her chapters nearly as much. Because of that, her chapters in some ways fed the burnout a bit, which was an unfortunate outcome because, as I mentioned, Dusk chapters were actively counteracting that burnout. I was actively getting interested in Sanderson and his Cosmere once again. And so it was kind of, while the burnout wasn't negatively affected from this book, it also wasn't positively affected from this book because I had the two POVs that were fighting against each other in terms of that. However, the story of exploration with the furthering of the Cosmere was certainly interesting and filled with some nice Easter eggs and references, though I do not feel like those truly require an understanding of the Cosmere in order to understand this story, which is a good thing. I am in full support of that. There are some things that need a little bit of background to fully comprehend what all it implies, but for the story itself, they are not necessary in that way. This book does function as a standalone fairly well, though I likely wouldn't recommend it as the first Sanderson that somebody would read. I'd recommend several other starting points before this one. I wouldn't recommend this as the first book you read for sure. Although I was disappointed with the Starling stuff in this book, as well as the fact that we really only explored one Isle of the Emberdark rather than Isles plural. Dusk is one of my new favorite characters. Dusk is a character that I met in 2025 and was top 2 characters, new to me characters in 2025. So absolutely fantastic character, and I really loved getting to know Dusk and experiencing his story in this book. Overall, I thought it was a really good book, not fantastic, but a lot of solid stuff, enough to make me enjoy the book. It's also pretty, like very beautiful. Although I don't actually care very much for the Tor cover. I don't think that that's a very, in my opinion, it doesn't accurately reflect my imagination of what the Emberdark is supposed to look like. And so that was weird. But that being said, I like this one. I think that I don't have very many just black books like this, and that's really cool. The black with the gold and everything. I think it looks good. I do like it. I'm glad I decided to buy it and read it, and especially to get the Dragon Seal edition instead of waiting for the regular one, because like I mentioned, I don't like the cover of the just general audience or general release Tor cover. I don't like it at all. But anyways, that is my review for Isles of the Emberdark by Brandon Sanderson. Thank you guys for watching an Erudite adventure. We post videos every Monday and Thursday, and have our social medias linked in the description down below. We'll see you guys again soon. Stay warm.